Boa tarde, todo mundo presente, nos assistindo pelo canal do YouTube. É um prazer receber a professora Patricia Hill Collins, da nossa universidade. Gentilmente aceitou o convite para conhecer a Unicamp e fazer essa palestra. Antes de apresentá-la, formalmente, também é necessário fazer uma série de agradecimentos que tornaram possível a vinda da professora Patricia Hill Collins ao Brasil e ao Unicamp. Em primeiro lugar, preciso agradecer ao Messila Maria Civilian Marian Center, para estudos sobre convivialidade e desigualdade, uma rede de pesquisadores que é financiada pelo governo alemão e tem como base aqui no Brasil o SEBRAP, e que tornou possível o convite, a vinda da professora Patricia Hill Collins. Também aos colegas do Programa de Pós-Graduação em Sociologia da Unicamp, em particular o professor Leonardo Fontes, nosso coordenador de pós-graduação, que fez todo o possível para que a Patrícia pudesse chegar até nós. O Instituto de Filosofia e Ciências Humanas, que deu todo o suporte e apoio. A Adunicamp, o nosso sindicato de professores aqui da Unicamp, que desde o primeiro momento aceitou a possibilidade de receber essa palestra aqui nesse auditório, que é importante para todos nós, na história da universidade. Então, e todos os funcionários e funcionárias dessas instituições, SEBRAP, Messila, Unicamp e IFCH, que tornaram isso possível. E não menos importante, mas em primeiro lugar também, a professora Mariana Chadui, minha colega de departamento, minha velha amiga, com quem a gente dividiu a tarefa de fazer essa palestra ser possível aqui na Unicamp. Então, Patrícia, bem-vinda. A professora Patricia Hill Collins é professora emérita da Universidade de Maryland, foi uma primeira mulher, a primeira socióloga negra a presidir a Associação Internacional de Sociologia. Ela é conhecida entre nós por suas obras traduzidas com pensamento feminista negro, bem mais que ideias, interseccionalidade, por cima Bilge. É uma das sociólogas mais influentes do mundo em termos do debate sobre raça, gênero, classe, interseccionalidade e a sua agenda. E a sua agenda. Oh, yeah. And my new best friend. Com a sua agenda de investigação sobre o pensamento feminista negro, os temas de interseccionalidade, estudos sobre juventude negra, entre outros que ela vai tratar aqui hoje. Então, muito bem-vindo ao Unicamp, Patricia, muito bem-vindo à Unicamp.
Boa tarde. Boa tarde. Well, thank you so much for this invitation. I'm very happy to be here with you. And I want to point out, you all are really good looking. You notice? I was looking at you during this introduction and I said, oh, sometimes I'll get an audience that is a little like that noise. But today, it's very nice to be here with you. I've brought with me work in progress. I'm always working on the next project. And one thing that has interested me throughout my entire career is really understanding the nature of resistance. I believe in political resistance. I believe it's always there. When you have social injustice, you have people who are pushing back, who are resisting in some way. So I am interested in thinking about more robust understandings of activism. And I'm also interested in how activism changes over time. As the situations around us change, How do our responses to that change? This is particularly important when we talk about Black activism and the situation of Black people in the United States and in the diaspora. One of the reasons I very much enjoy traveling to Brazil is because there's a very rich tradition here that educates me when I come. I travel as a student, but I also travel bringing you what I know, or what I think I know. So for today, I will be presenting a talk as part of a bigger project on Black activism. And today's presentation is Keeping the Beat, Black Youth, Hip Hop, and Black activism. And the open question here is keeping the beat. Who will keep the beat of Black activism going over time? That's the beat, that's the rhythm, that's the movement, that's what we do, that's the change. I'm not moving my finger now that I've found it. So my presentation is in two parts. Disobedient generations, Black youth, and Black activism. Then that youth activism, people who come of age during a certain period of time and who have common experiences or face common challenges, have the choice to submit, to accept, to lie down, to be sad, or they have the choice to disobey, to not obey the rules. Here are the places for you. You Black women, Black people, Black men, poor Black people deserve it. You deserve these spaces. You should be cleaning up after other people. Work with integrity, but not everyone should be going to that same place. It will say Black people have always been on the bottom for hundreds of years. Why should it be any different for you? And I argue that each generation that comes of age under those conditions is predisposed to be disobedient because that is what young people do. Any of you who have small children, you may know they don't listen to you. You can say, stop that. And they say, what? I don't care. They keep going anyhow. So I'm interested in the notion of generations and age and how that shapes activist thinking and activity. Still there. It's a big one. I'm going to be going fast today. I want to warn you. I'm giving you the argument, the overview, and encouraging you to help me fill it in. Or if you disagree, let me know. Do not let me go out in the world saying stupid stuff that you know is stupid stuff. Right? Part 2, Black youth, hip hop, and generational consciousness. I want to focus on the generational consciousness of Black youth who have come of age under hip hop. And that might be many of you. And I'm going to argue there that we have a particular kind of politics that we have engaged in the United States. I'm going to focus on the United States, but not, I don't want you to think that that's all I'm thinking about. But I'm going to argue there that changes in the social context that affected Black youth particularly shaped a generational context that influences hip hop. Hip hop is the term we use to talk about a generation of approximately 50 years from the 1970s to now. And that's a pretty long period of time to get a good sense of what has happened. Still there? Okay, heavy thinking here. I know you didn't come just across your knee and go, oh, it's going to be so much fun, hanging out with Patricia Hill Collins. No, You came here to work. Intellectual work. All right. So let's get busy. All right, part one. Disobedient generations, Black youth and Black cultural politics. I use this as my inspiration slide. You might have a different inspiration slide, but this is Nina Simone. I'm hoping you have heard of Nina Simone, who has a very classic song, I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free. I wish I could break all the chains binding me. I want to be free to say and do what I want. This is the vision of freedom that each generation has encountered. Each generation of Black youth has encountered this aspiration for freedom and the obstacles that stand in the way of going there and getting there. So I start with this because Nina Simone is a generation before hip hop, beginning to talk about connections between generations. So here are my core questions. What shared challenges and experiences confront each generation of Black youth? What faces each generation? What is it like to come of age during a certain period of time? Second, how has each distinctive generation of Black youth responded to these challenges? Some have responded through open rebellion. Some have been much more subtle. There are multiple responses to these challenges of what does it mean to want to be free and to move toward freedom? And third, how do contemporary Black youth participate in traditions of Black activism? I'm going to argue that Black youth today have a long history to draw upon, but face unique challenges that were not there in the past. And I'm interested in how contemporary Black youth draw upon and remake those traditions. Many of those traditions will be cultural. Many will be political activism. Many will be other than that. We are in an open period. So the overarching challenge that each generation faces is something called a durable anti-Black racism. Durable means it is hardy. No matter what you do, it's like it is tough. It doesn't just go away because you think it should. People have to work against this durable anti-Black racism. But its durability doesn't take the same form over time. Under formal slavery, anti-Black racism takes one form. That is the form of enslaving Black bodies, where enslaved Africans are not people, but chattel. They are property and treated as such. More recently, racial segregation in the United States, the period that I'm dating from 1945 to the 1970s, even though racial segregation started far earlier than that. But racial segregation during this period preceding our own catalyzed waves of visible Black activism. That what has come before this moment was activism by young people who were disobedient and who refused to go to their assigned places for reasons that I'm happy to talk about, but are quite significant. And during that period of time, I would divide that period into two phases or two forms of expression. The civil rights period, you may have heard Martin Luther King and all of that, the marching, putting on the suits and being respectable and pushing for changes in schools and pushing for civil rights. And the Black Power movement, which took another perspective which very often did not want to fit into society as it was, but wanted to see a new society that respected Blackness in ways that were unprecedented. Now, these two movements were not either or. What happened is they spoke to one another. You can think of this more as a continuum of thought and action during this period. But the bottom line is everyone was dealing with social institutions that were fundamentally racially segregated. The period that we're in now is a period of racial desegregation. It is not a period of racial integration. Integration meaning you have everything is equal. A Black person can simply just do anything a white person could do. It's not that simple, although people long for it to be that simple. We have what I call an imperfect desegregation. And that means that some Black people have done far better than anybody anticipated in the past, particularly the creation of a Black middle class in the US that is typified by the election of the first Black president. And yet at the same time, there's an entire group of people, a generation, and I would argue 2 generations of people at this point, who did not share in the benefits of racial segregation. And these are the people who are living in urban areas and in rural. But significantly in urban areas where they experience poverty, poor education, poor health services, lack of jobs, but especially intensive policing to encourage them to not be disobedient, where even the perception of disobedience can get you killed. Still there. And what comes from that situation is the Black Lives Matter movement, which is very much a generational movement, even though the issue that it is dealing with is one of police violence and policing and incarceration. These are old issues that have taken new form for this particular generation. And I date the Black Lives Matter movement from 2012 to 2020. That is a period of growing visibility from the death of Trayvon Martin in 2012 to the death of George Floyd, which catapulted the Black Lives Matter movement to a global movement. This is incredible. This has happened. But notice I say to the present, because we are now 5 years past that visible moment. But that in no way means that the movement is over or that the need for Black activism has gone away. This is not a situation of looking for a photo op. And when you see the photograph of the protest, that's the end of the story. That often is the beginning of the story. So disobedient generations, Black youth who share similar challenges, experiences, and coming-of-age stories. And I think we can say that there are many similar coming-of-age stories for Black youth who are disenfranchised in the US. They are, quote, disobedient because they do not go willingly to their assigned place in racial hierarchy. Okay. And third, I'm interested in this question. How is disobedience different by generation? Or how does it differ by generation? So today I'll focus a bit on the civil rights Black Power generation and something called the hip-hop generation. This is a term that people are increasingly using about the youth who come of age during this period. So So I do not assume that the hip hop generation is inherently disobedient or inherently capitulating to capitalist consumers. I think these are questions we really have to investigate seriously and get beyond our own preconceived notions. So what is the hip hop generation? I pulled out 4 books where this question began to be framed in this way. The first one is Can't Stop, Won't Stop, A History of the Hip Hop Generation. That one came out in 2005, authored by Jeff Chang. And that was a book that attempted to say, there is a thing called the hip hop generation. Who are they? How would we talk about them? And this is when you begin to get scholarship that is getting more nuanced about what this generation is, what they face, what they're all about. Now, I'm sure you all notice I am not from the hip hop generation. Did you all notice this? Do you see the hair up here? I believe it's Zinga, something like that. But that's Zinga or Zingo, I'm not sure about the gender of my hair. However, Portuguese is very difficult. So I have to study things that other people may take for granted or that other people think are not particularly important. But I think what's happening for this generation is crucial. So I read the scholarship that is now coming out that is investigating the issues that concern me. I will not be singing and dancing and telling you about my favorite artists and who I think has the best track. I'm not going to do that. I'm giving you a framework to think about this, right? Or reject. The second book is by N.K. Asante Jr. called It's Bigger Than Hip Hop. Now we've got the rise of the, are you ready? Post-hip hop generation. Something happens between 2005 and 2008 where Asante thinks what's going on is bigger than hip hop. So in this book, he happens to be the son of Malene Asante, who is one of the originators of Afrocentrism in the U.S. But N.K. Asante really is interested in the issues that I'm also interested in. What are the political implications of this hip hop generation? What are the politics like? But he already assumes something has happened that we're now moving into a new phase. I think that's interesting. So this is why I wrote this. You can argue with me or not. The third one is called The Hip Hop Generation Fight Back. Now, this was published in 2012. And it was published by a young Black female scholar by the name of Adriana Clay, who happens to be a sociologist. And she did a study on youth activism and post-civil rights politics by doing a study of Black youth in San Francisco and how high school students. I want you to keep in mind that often when people think about social actors, they start with college on. They don't necessarily think of high school students as activists. And yet so much of hip hop has come from very young people, many of them in high school, doing spoken word poetry. So the interesting thing that Adriana Clay is really saying there's a hip hop generation and they're fighting back. And she's looking into all the ways that these kids are fighting for school, for their education in a system that isn't particularly sympathetic. But this last one is quite interesting as well. It's called simply the Trayvon Generation. And this is the cover. This came out in 2022. This particular book is written by Elizabeth Alexander, who happens to be a Black woman literary scholar, who currently is the head of the Mellon Foundation. Now, this is very interesting that you have someone who's at the head of a organization that has enormous amounts of money and resources, who publishes why she is in this position or being considered for this position, a book called The Trayvon Generation, where she clearly looks at this whole generation of people who have come of age, striving for something better than what they have been offered. All right? You still there? Okay, people, let's keep going. I like to say no. It's good. Let me look up here. Is anybody asleep up there yet? Because you know, the people who sit up in the balcony sometimes like to sit in the back and kind of doze if it gets boring. I can see you, you know. You do realize glasses on. I can see you. Right? So anyhow, moving on to this notion of the hip hop generation. Now, if you happen to be in this generation, I would ask you to begin to think about how you are placed within it, how you are situated within it, how people are beginning to study your experiences and your ideas, and particularly your activism. But here's the definition. Here's another one. 2003, Young Blacks and the Crisis in African American Culture on the left, the Hip Hop Generation by Patricia Hill. This is a book that influenced a lot of people in how people thought of young Black people. But on the right, I brought in a book that also has been very influential in thinking about the generational identity issue, the hip hop generation. And that is Joan Morgan's book all the way back in 1999, way back, can you believe this? Who writes the book When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost. And this is a book about hip hop feminism. So she's beginning to bring in or identify the strands in hip hop that are already there. So I present this to you to quickly say there is no one face of the hip hop generation. There is no one gender. There is no one class. There's a lot going on in this particular space. But it isn't just all about culture. So, definition, generational identity. For those of you who like definitions, here it is. A group of Black people who come of age and experience similar challenges during the same period of time. I'm looking at 1980s to the present. This hip hop generation, I'm going to argue, is profoundly intersectional. Now, this is something that you will find elsewhere in my work where I write about a lot of this. But basically, race, gender, class, sexuality, age, ability, ethnicity, and geography, regional and global, all work in various ways to describe the experiences of this hip hop generation. Now, I'm looking at Black youth in the US, but when we think about how broadly hip hop has traveled, this could be a global generational identity that could be called this. But I also want to point out another feature of this particular definition, and that is Black cultural politics and how important Black cultural politics are. These are, I'll talk about this in a minute, but it's shared by a generation. The culture that is around you when you come of age, music, dance, poetry, film, all of those ideas that are around you can generate feelings, memories, and or political science. So the possibilities for Black cultural politics as a site of activism is especially important when we talk about a young generation. Keep in mind, Black youth can't get jobs as the president of Brazil or of the United States. Those institutional settings are not available to them. They are young. So if you can't vote, how else do you vote? How else do you weigh in on the things that are around you? This is a quick chart that I put up here for those of you who want to map what I'm talking about. And if you were there, the talk I gave on Friday evening, how many of you were at that? Okay, that's okay. Ooh, okay, this is good. Because I spent a lot of time just talking about this. But this is the notion of psychoactivism. Just to give you a sense of how we might think more robustly about that. Institutional politics, up in the upper left-hand corner, you see the Obama family and the family politics of that, the social institutions, the way you have to behave in order to be accepted by many institutions. The married couple, family with 2 children, smiling, now, we know this is all theater in some way. This is a particular family. But the thing is that what are the rules that allow you to get a government job, or go to school, or handle the media? So institutional politics matter. Down below that, protest politics. This is what most people think of when they think of activism. And this is a demonstration from Baltimore from, I believe, 2015, when a young man by the name of Freddie Gray died at the hands of the police. And after years of all kinds of really seriously negative policing occurring in Baltimore. And this is one of the spontaneous demonstrations, but there was also an uprising in Baltimore. So Baltimore is a place that really brings a lot of this hip-hop generation stuff to heart, a specific place. Over on the right, survival politics is another form of activism. And these are people who are really devoted to community, family, religion, whatever it may be. And again, the graphic I bring to you is from Baltimore. These are young men on the street. These are the ones that everybody throws away. But up at the top, this is the box we're going to. And this is the box of freedom. This is the box of cultural politics. This is the box of how ideas and intellectual activism met. Now, this is a very heavy-duty slide. Are we keeping up? Are we trying? This is why we have a question and answer period. Ooh. Okay. Moving on. Black cultural politics, knowledge and activism. These are ideas that create meaning in everyday life. Music, poetry, fiction, dance, drama, photography, and film offer spaces of creativity that build Black communities and sustain Black solidarity. And I learned that Black youth are at the forefront of Black cultural politics. This is where the creativity really comes from. People who are willing to take risks and get out in front. And now it's much more, I wouldn't say easier, but there's so many more ways to do this. Still there. Keep moving. Oh, excuse me. Hip-hop offers ideas in everyday life that create meaning and guide actions. You see kids walking and listen to their music. They're on the metro. They're moving. They're thinking about things. There's a language of solidarity. So cultural politics is alive and well. It is not something that's just on television. This is where the creative spirit is. Yeah. So hip-hop's generational consciousness. That's what I would say. We have a contradiction here. This is what those who come of age during the hip-hop generation confront. On the one hand, on the right, I'm looking at something called colorblind racism. And this book is titled Racism Without Racism. And this is a form of racism that is still anti-Black, but it doesn't appear to be anti-Black. Because no one is saying Black people are bad or Black people are ugly or Black people shouldn't get jobs. Everyone's friendly. And yet, the effects of the racism are the same. So you can't put a face on it like the white overseas, well, up until perhaps now in the US, faces and names that you could make who are currently holding that positions. But that's another talk. I think what we can say is racism made it very difficult to use prime tools of anti-racist activism to push back. What's going to happen? What's coming out of this is what I would argue is an unapologetic blackness. A generation of people who said, you told us that in order to belong, things will be good, racism is over, as long as we are like the Obama family. And we want to say, no, there's something really off here. It does not work. And when you start listening to the music and the spoken word poetry, and you get a sense of what people are actually saying who are young people, they're being very black during a time when you're not supposed to be black. Got it? It's a contradictory politics. Why are all these black kids who have all of these opportunities that we never had in the past, why are they acting like that? Why are they being black in ways that are not acceptable? Why are they being unapologetically black? Now, it's a contradiction, but not really. I put the book up of 2018 because I think Charlene Carruthers is a young black thinker, activist, whose book is titled Unapologetic, a black, queer, and feminist mandate for radical movements. Hip-hop produced a Charlene Carruthers, you see. So there's so much there that we need to deal with analytically and intellectually. So let me move on. We have gotten to part 2. Notice how much brown guys covered in part 1. I told you about generational stuff. I told you about black cultural politics. I've introduced the idea of freedom as a blue theme. I've given a little bit of foundation about civil rights, black power, and hip hop, a little bit of social movements. I've raised a series of questions about what is the generational consciousness that is attached to hip hop, and how does that articulate with activism and activist strategy. That's what we suggested. We've had our first major social movement already under hip hop, called the Black Lives Matter movement, which, by the way, was headed by black, queer women, feminist women. So we have a really interesting period of time that we're in already. So what I'm going to do, because obviously this is a huge topic. So if we want to be here for the next 2 weeks, well, we do that, but no, we're not doing that. We could be dealing with 50 years of hip hop. So what I'm going to do is pick 4 moments and talk about those 4 moments. 2 historical and 2 contemporary. And just see what those moments say about this generational consciousness. Now, I want everybody to do something for me. Can you put your right hand up? Do you know which hand is your right hand? Put your right hand up. It's not the same as mine, because mine is mirror image. All right. Now, can you put your left hand up? Okay, we got this, right? Okay, now, could you look to people on each side of you? Look to the person to the left. See, brother, the wrong way. To our students and professors, I mean, I'm not an educated group. What is going on here? Okay, fine. All right. I just want to make sure before we get into part 2 that you are not just going into so comfy in my chair. I put a little I want to make sure you can do that in your other lectures. what we have here is the dating of hip hop. I'm not the only one who's noticed this. There are video histories that are out there. Hip hop has celebrated its 50th anniversary. And usually people look at that hip hop in terms of the music and the figures, and they now interview all these kind of old hip hop people who are really gray haired with funky beards, who talk about, yeah, when I was a kid on the block in the Bronx, and here's what we did, you know, we're getting that kind of stuff, all right? So that means you have arrived when you have a video history on 50 years of your experience. So I'm pretty, I think it's kind of right for me to do this work. So, but we also have some interesting, do we have the University of Conference here? Is there not an archive here in some way? I think there's an archive here. When you begin to archive work, you know there's one at heart. Also, yeah. The head of that one just recently died. The head of the Harvard archive recently died, passed away. Okay, so I already say healthy man. Stay healthy. We can't have that, all right? Okay, keep going. Sorry, I got distracted by my own dog. I'm back. Okay. But the four selected moments that I want to look at are top of public entity, fight the power in 1990. I want to look at the miseducation of Lauren Hill in 1998 as signature moments. And then I want to move ahead with blazing speed to the contemporary relationship between Beyonce and Kendrick Lamar, right? Which is really a very interesting use of the power. So we're going to look at some of these early stuff. Now keep in mind, I want to let you know I'm not an expert. So again, if I say things you said, oh, she missed the ball, let me know. I'm open to it. But first of all, I think what you begin to get is a generational identity of music and film by 1990. Pretty clear. And it's political. So hip hop as a site of Black cultural politics to me, this is pretty established. But what's the nature of the generational identity? What is the generational identity about the meaning of being Black in the US? What happens with something like Public Enemy, Fear of the Black Planet in 1990, and Spike Lee's soundtrack in 1989 for Do the Right Thing, is the beginning of the artists collaborating on music and film. And film and video being a site for cultural politics that Black youth in particular, Black young creators are entering into. Now, please keep in mind that these doors were closed when you talk about film, up until this period of time. This is when doors begin to open. This is also when filmmakers begin to have now that makes it much easier to make your own film. So not anybody, but most people can become filmmakers now, should they choose to. But then, this was the major break. And what you get is the sound and the image of Black urban community. The connection between the political stuff from Public Enemy and Spike Lee's imagining of that in this classic film. But you also get kind of a male, very much so. Okay, I just want to mention Boys and Men. He was 23 when he made it. I'm sorry, I just want to tell you, he was 23. John Singleton, when he made Boys in the Hood in 1991. And this is a Hollywood. He's in the museum of Hollywood. Okay, another talk. I'm not going to say any more about that, but we're just going to do this and move on to the next slide. Oh, can you hear that? Oh, okay, can you hear it? Right, oh. We tried, people. This is me trying to know sound. Let's move on. We're gonna keep trying. We'll figure it out here. Let's see. notion of what is interesting to me in the way out here today, I decided to listen to the entire album of The Miseducation of Lawrence Hill. Because it's a long trip from Sao Paulo to Campinas. You've noticed this, right? I had plenty of time to listen the whole way. When do I get to do that? So, because it was very impressive that, again, she was 23 years old when she released this album. That's really young. To come up with this kind of complexity that was there. This was her debut solo album. You know, she was with the Fugees before that. But to think about this particular album in the context of a reaction to gangster rap, right? And in the context of the corporate climate of hip hop and capitalism. When hip hop was really coming to the attention of, we can make money. Wait a minute, let's do this. Maybe we can sell some stuff. So when you begin to see that decade when all that was up in the air, shifting, and the debate, it was very interesting to see an album by a young, a young musician who uses hip hop in ways that, to me, I see the connection between spoken word poetry and music. And all the things that have happened in spoken word poetry since then, particularly among middle school kids and high school kids, the competitions that have is very exciting because it's a space for them to come to political voice. So we see this amplified in this particular album. Okay, then we move on to Beyonce. I have a few things to say about Beyonce, but I'm going to restrain myself. All right. Because for now, I would like to tell you my relationship with Beyonce. I'm going to make it a personal relationship. Now, I do not personally know Beyonce, just to let you know. She does not know me. She may never have heard of me. But as I was writing my book, Black Sexual Politics, I had to think about how to open the book. It's a book about Black sexual politics, gender relations in Black communities. And I wanted to ground my opening in Black feminist thought. Now, what was happening during this period of time was this album by Destiny's Child called Survivor. And it was very much, the song Survivor was an anthem for Black women. And that anthem said, I'm a survivor, make it, I'm a survivor, but my family, yes, I can do it. And all these women, and I go, first song was my Beyonce imitation, and this was now the ordinary people imitation. I'm a survivor, can do it with this baby, this man, who is getting they on my no. So there was a lot of pathos because and energy in this particular song, this anthem. Now on the single, and she's still in Destiny's Child, there was a song called Bootylicious. Right? To be a survivor and heroic. I mean, Bootylicious. Selling is a contradiction there. That song stood out for me because when I listened to it, this is a song about Bootylicious. You should go listen to it. About, it's my booty. I'm going to do what I want with it. It's not your booty. I own it. If anybody makes money off of it, it will be me. And I know my booty is vicious. I understand that because I am. Now, this song was from 2001. All right? You understand the context there was just a strange time for this particular song. But on the other hand, it foreshadowed a whole strand of Black women's empowerment. And it said to me, oh, and also in the book, I did do a deep dive into the history of pirates and booty. Pirates is a treasure that you capture. There's a lot of history around the word booty that you might have fun with at some point in your spare time, which you do not have. All right, so saying that. All right, so the whole notion of they were doing something, and then Beyonce was doing something that was far more sophisticated than it appeared to be. Was the whole notion of using pop culture, using your visibility in pop culture to say things that were not poetry necessarily, but weren't necessarily what they appeared to be. There was always a subtext in the work. And when I look at Beyonce's work, I see that growing over time. So if we go down right beneath it, there's Lemonade, which is a video. This is Beyonce now moving into being making movies of her own, not just Hollywood movies, but saying, not only am I famous and wealthy and bad, if I can say that to you all, is it okay for me to say badass? Are you able to translate that? The translator is totally cool who's here today. Imagine her life and she can handle it. Can you handle it? Can you handle it? But anyhow, but when I look at this, when you look at this particular video, it's really quite sophisticated in terms of Black women's history. And it captures a lot that's in there. But I believe one song that's on there is Freedom. The song Freedom from this particular video. And this is the song that becomes the anthem for much of Black power, Black Lives Matter movement. Pick up on this song of freedom. And Beyonce performed this song in formation. Here we have on the right the Super Bowl halftime show. I'll talk about the Super Bowl in a minute. I want to get to Kendrick Lamar. I don't know if you know what the Super Bowl halftime show is in the U.S. It's a very important national attention. Once a year, two football teams who are the winning not soccer teams, football teams. Even though it's football, I know you got the football. Football, American football, where you have large teams that have been battling out. There's an enormous amount of money involved with the Super Bowl in terms of advertising. It's one of the biggest global stages you can be on. And what they'll do during the halftime is they will feature prominent artists. So the halftime featured during the halftime show is very important. It's a big audience. Now, please keep in mind that the NFL, the National Football League, 70% of the professional football players are Black men. So this is Black men going out on battle on the field to see who's going to be the best team in America, so that there can be bragging rights there. Keep in mind that the NFL has very few Black men as owners, coaches, or general managers. So this is a situation where men are being, quite frankly, exploited year after year after year in a major American national pageant for American national identity. It's all about American national identity. Then we bring in the performers. And what they do on the stage is quite interesting, because what Beyonce did, she did not get her whole, she did not get the entire, I think it's like 12 minutes to perform. She got a third of that and had to share the stage. But what she did was to take that anthem Freedom and recast it. Ladies, get in formation. This is not bootylicious. This is sexy, but in formation. And she invokes in this particular performance the Black Power movement. So you can't see she's going back and using these past references in ways that if you can read the code of having seen Lemonade and listening to the music and following all the way through, you can see that she appears to be the beautiful woman who's doing bootylicious or whatever. But there's something quite different going on in her. As she becomes an artist that's becoming a creative person that has global impact. Okay. Now that becomes kind of important as that gets the next home some other day. But that's interesting in terms of how the song Freedom travels, because if you listen to the soundtrack, Kendrick Lamar. So she begins to collaborate with people who may not necessarily be front stage or conversely, they collaborate with her. We don't know the direction of all that. But I think what's going on here is really interesting in terms of mass media spectacle. Because the mass media, hip hop is bigger than America. It's bigger than music, it's bigger than film. It's really affecting mass media spectacle.
Now, this is important because then when we get, it worked, to Kendrick Lamar, we come to an artist that is also there. Now, let me just say a bit about this before I get back to the Super Bowl and mass media spectacle. The site, oh no, I would have to give this whole nother talk and change this. Should I tell you about this slide and you just do your best, or shall I skip the slide? Come on, the answer is tell me and we'll do our best. That was a fake question. No, but this is basically at the same time that all of this is going on, Kendrick Lamar, a very different artist, is also coming into his own with an amazing background in terms of his history. But this song, We're Gonna Be All Right, was an anthem on To Pimp a Butterfly. And I watched the video of this particular song. And if you've ever seen this video, he's flying. He's flying through space. He's landing on top of a light post. And he's saying, we're going to be all right. Who's the we? It's going to be all right. And when I saw this video, I thought, whoa, because it reminded me of a Black folktale, Black American folktale called The People Could Fly, that came out of this whole period of time when you knew you could not escape slavery, but the way you could escape slavery was through the imagination. So those stories become really important. That book was from 1985, but the connection is way older than that. So in some ways, these are artists who are signaling that they are grounded in Black culture in ways that they don't necessarily have to tell you. This is part of the cultural politics. So let me move on to my last discussion, and this would be Kendrick Lamar. Now, this has just occurred, 2025. I think this was January 2025. And what we have with Kendrick Lamar, who's been building this massive following up to this point. So as much as the people who run the Super Bowl wish they didn't have to do it, he's the artist they're going to have to showcase. And they're going to showcase him for the entire 11 minutes, 12 minutes. He's not going to share a minute with anybody else. Beyonce had to share with Bruno Mars and Coldplay. All right, just to give you an idea. That's what happened. But here's Kendrick that shows up in 2025. Well, what is this, 8-9 years later, who says, you know what, this show's going to be mine. Same demographics in terms of the football itself. But this was a mass media spectacle within the mass media spectacle of American nationalism. I'm going to say that again. This was a mass media spectacle, something that, whoa, goes around the world within the mass media spectacle that supposedly is supporting American nationalism. So Kendrick Lamar launches a very powerful critique of American nationalism in that setting. This to me is a moment of profound arrival of Black activism, of hip hop artists, in terms of what they're actually doing besides poetry and singing and dancing and all this stuff. On the right, the graphic is Kendrick Lamar standing among a sea of dancers. They are bent over and they're waving like the American flag waves, like a flag waves in the air. So they're all together. There's the red, white, and blue. And he's talking over this. But the thing is, the American flag is on their backs. That's the message here. It's on their backs. It's on the backs of Black labor, Black youth, all of that. He doesn't have to write it all out for you. You can look at it and say, whoa, I can't believe he did that. And if that weren't enough, he has Samuel L. Jackson as Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam is the archetypal American Image, Uncle Sam, Papa, whoever, all of that, who comes out, I don't know if I can play this for you because you may not be able to hear it, but who comes out and says, "What are you doing? That's too Black. That's too ghetto. We don't do that here." Almost the voice of, "Have you lost your mind?" And what happens after Samuel Jackson comes once or twice as Uncle Sam is the party really takes off. Everybody's out there saying, "This is our field too." Serena Williams comes out and does some kind of walk step that I don't even know if I can do, but there we go. So this particular performance is not just a performance. It is a very powerful intervention by, I would say, a member of the hip hop generation who is clearly channeling past practices, channeling the arts, using Black cultural politics, but in a way that creates space in the media as an institution and goes places where we cannot go. Now, see, you can't hear it. Sorry. Oh, come back. Oh, well, never mind. We're just going to turn this off. Oh, he's going to turn this. He wants me to go back. We went all the way back. Excuse us. You gone through the whole thing? Yes. We don't have to go through the whole talk. You lived through the whole talk. That's bad enough.
You're getting good. Oh, yeah.
But where does it go, though? Where's the speaker? We're trying to find the speaker.
Come on here.
Oh, God. Let's make it louder. Make it loud. There is where we need. Nope. Okay. Okay. Now we have this.
Mm-hmm. No.
The end. I think it's time for us to end this portion of the talk since we have three people up here. See, people never quit. Some people. It's a. You gotta hear the whole. Apparently, all right. It's not the end. Apparently, that was premature. But in the meantime, I'll just talk about the fact of the big questions that were raised and to thank you very much for your patience. And I would like to open this up to question and answer period, but Uncle Sam may come on.
Just a minute.
You're going the wrong way. Okay. I will forever remember this talk for this moment. Only once before have I given a talk where we had like a technical, really strange thing happen. I said something and all the lights went out. We were sitting in pitch black. It was just amazing. No, you got Public Enemy.
The next one? No. Mm.
Okay, fine. With the mic. Oh, here it is. Jog around. Yeah. That was the message of Uncle Sam to Kendrick Lamar. You too, no, don't do it. It's too ghetto. Don't you know how to play the game? You were almost there. And right after he says that, it's like, yeah, I know, and I am playing the game. So it's a powerful moment. Now, this is really the end, for real, all right? This is a time when we move into conversation. Okay, go for it. Thank you. All right. Hand it over to you. Oh, I need this.
Oh, yes.
You can start. Oh, no, you can start.
Obrigado, Patrícia. Também quero agradecer a equipe técnica aqui, Magrão do Unicamp, a Silvia está fazendo a tradução simultânea, os colegas da Adverbum, e a Patrícia concordou enfim, a gente ter um tempo para conversar, algo em torno de 20 minutos, então uma rodada de questões diretas para ela, direto ao ponto, quem quiser começar, a gente pode começar com 3 questões. Vamos ali. Do you want to write the questions?
Oi, Patrícia. Eu que estou falando aqui. Pode.
Stand up. Stand up.
Oi, Patrícia. Assim, um prazer estar aqui, te ouvir. Inclusive, eu fui introduzido à interseccionalidade por conta de você. Assim, o meu orientador me introduziu isso na graduação, inclusive. Então, eu fiquei muito, acredito que emocionado pelo fato. E aí eu mandei para os meus amigos, eu descobri ontem em cima da hora e tudo mais. Mas, enfim, sendo direto ao ponto, porque eu sei que tem outras pessoas para perguntar, eu queria saber, você falou muito sobre a questão de ser livre, né? E a gente sabe que, sendo uma pessoa negra, isso é bem complexo dentro de muitos, acredito que em várias áreas, né? Dentro de um contexto pessoal, dentro de um contexto institucional. Falando quanto uma pessoa que está dentro da academia, eu acredito que também vai a minha pergunta dentro desse lugar. Eu queria saber de você quais foram as suas táticas para ter e se sentir livre dentro da academia. Porque eu acredito que, por mais que a gente queira se sentir livre, a gente não consegue por várias questões, né? Eu estou dentro de um lugar onde a gente ainda discute reservas de cotas, por exemplo, né? Não uma garantia ou uma leitura de uma reparação histórica para pessoas negras, pessoas indígenas. E eu também queria saber o que você pensa sobre isso dentro de um contexto político e como a liberdade está atrelada à questão de ser negro. Acredito que você, enquanto uma mulher negra afro-americana, tem uma percepção, mas eu, enquanto homem afro-brasileiro, é uma outra realidade, né? Porque a gente também vive uma questão muito maquiada dentro da democracia racial. Então, eu gostaria muito de saber quais foram as suas táticas para lidar com isso, se sentir livre, e como a gente também pode fazer isso enquanto pessoas negras dentro do corpo universitário e vida pessoal.
Oi, Patrícia, um prazer estar aqui com você, ouvir um pouco desse ativismo e também do hip hop nos Estados Unidos. Eu gostaria muito de saber, porque aqui no Brasil acontece muito da extrema-direita se apropriar agora da cultura hip hop, desconsiderando questões importantes como racismo, como também a escravidão, etc., para passar por cima de tudo que a gente coloca como ativismo negro aqui. E isso é muito real, muito presente, né, essa apropriação da extrema-direita. Como lá nos Estados Unidos também, Kanik, Minaj, acho que recentemente também fez algo nesse sentido. Aí eu queria que você falasse para a gente um pouco sobre.
Boa tarde, meu nome é Maísa, queria agradecer muito, Patrícia, é uma alegria estar aqui te ouvindo. A minha pergunta vai um pouco na linha ali da companheira, no sentido de que a interseccionalidade a gente tem utilizado, né, para pensar a centralidade de raça, classe, gênero, para a construção do conhecimento e como metodologia de análise também, né? No entanto, a gente tem observado, tanto na academia quanto nos movimentos sociais, as pessoas utilizando o termo interseccionalidade para falar de outras questões e ignorando a questão racial e a questão de classe. Aí queria te ouvir como você observa esse movimento, se tem acontecido lá também. É isso, obrigada.
All right, let me talk about each of those. Those are really good questions. Oops, 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 oops. Oops, I don't need to hear the Portuguese translation. The strategies for feeling free, starting or being free. Actually, let me just start with let me switch the questions orders a little bit. I'd like to start with the question of the far right appropriation of hip hop, because I think the far right appropriation of hip hop parallels the mainstream appropriation of intersectionality. And if you can see the connections between appropriation and its use, if you don't recognize this thing you created, then you have to wonder what's going on. So let me say something about hip hop first, because in some ways hip hop is freer to deal with these issues than those of us in the academy. The beauty of hip hop is once something is appropriated, you can just move on and use hip hop to talk about it as being appropriated. And that is kind of what's happened in a lot of the music. It's not just flat. It's a question of kind of this battles that go on over it. So clearly battles over the battles of meaning in hip hop. That's a space. So the far right doesn't have the creativity to create in hip hop. What it does is it can mimic and it can appropriate and it can pretend to be hip hop. But the people who are genuinely grounded in the experiences that hip hop comes from and speaks to know that. And they use the tools of hip hop and stay ahead of that. I think the issue of appropriation is more challenging or differently challenging in the academy, because the term intersectionality, how can I say this? Now this connects with the whole question of how I stay free, all right? Right. The term intersectionality, once it became something that you could use to get mileage out of, once it became something that that it would get you published, people started using the term intersectionality in all kinds of ways. They did not read the literature. They did not cite the work. They fundamentally cited a few people, sometimes me, but more often Kimberly Crenshaw, who they read 2 articles, and now they know what intersectionality is. The pushback for that is to argue with them about how well do you know your sources? How well do you understand intersectionality? Because the concept is grounded in race and class and gender and sexuality to a certain extent. So to me, the pushback against intersectionality is to do the work and use intersectionality in such a way that it is excellent and impeccable, and that it can become the groundwork for challenging the thin uses of intersectionality. Don't try and fight back. Don't try and respond to the people who are using it inappropriately. You waste all your time educating someone who really doesn't care, because what they're doing is exploiting it in the first place. Rather, spend the time doing the work to deepen the concept, and that is far more substantive. Now, I think that speaks to, that's an example that I would use from my own work of how I stay free. I don't spend my time fussing with people who I disagree with, because what happens is they're setting the agenda and I'm always responding to the agenda that they set. I think if I set the agenda and they have to respond to me, we're going to go that way. And if I set the agenda in such a way that it is so complex and clear at the same time that they have to run to keep up with me, that's what I want. And that's how I stay free. Now, the most recent example of that is intersectionality. In 2015, I realized that exactly what you're describing was happening. People were using intersectionality in ways that were inappropriate, or that's not to say you always have to say race and gender all the time. It's more the substance of why we do this work was missing. The term was there, but the substance was missing. So I wrote a piece called Intersectionality's Definitional Dilemmas, which I got published. You know, it was about, listen, if we don't control this definition, we're going to lose this term and it's going to lose meaning. And then I set out to answer my own questions in my own work. So from this article, Intersectionality's Definitional Dilemmas, which was before it was appropriated, appropriation is common. When you have something that is good or quote, marketable or whatever, people will come for it and copy it, right? Without attribution. So I knew they were coming for intersectionality, but what was going on in the US at that time was they were going after our version of the far right, or just scholars that didn't think about any of this, were going after race. Intersectionality was too hard because they'd have to think about two things at once. So I thought we had time and I wanted to get out in front of that. So what I did, first book, I think between 2016 and 2024, I published 3 books on intersectionality. 3, not 2, not 1, 3. One of them with a revision. So this is what I pretty much did for 8 years, was work on that. The first one was Intersectionality, the book that's the introductory book. The second was Intersectionality as Critical Social Theory. And that was to cover the ground of the theorists who were going to run in and use this data produced by people who were doing intersectionality to build theories of intersectionality or whatever, or to discredit it perhaps. I said, I'm going to write a book that makes you come through me about what it is if you're going to claim that intersectionality is a theory. People were doing that in their work all the time. I'm using the theory of intersectionality. And I wondered, well, what are they talking about here? Have they thought more than 2 minutes about what theory is? So I wrote that book. I love that book. That book was so good. I just want to let you know. I just love that book. What I did in that book, I was happy. It was hard, but I did it. Yeah. Okay. I put Simone de Beauvoir in a chapter with, who else was in the chapter? Ida B. Wells or Pauli Murray. Yeah, Pauli Murray, who's a Black woman thinker who you probably don't know much about. And Simone de Beauvoir, the French thinker who everyone thinks of as women's freedom. And I just put them in the same chapter. And I said, we're going to have to learn how to read dialogically, right? In terms of intersectionality. So that book just has legs. And the third one was Lethal Intersections, Race, Gender, and Violence. And that was taking the idea of violence and looking at violence as a social problem and asking, how can these ideas address this particular issue? And this is still grounded completely in the history of intersectionality, which starts off a lot of it, women of color dealing with violence. So I was perfectly happy with all that. And I said, this is kind of like, for me, a drop the mic moment on intersectionality. Now you just read. And what really, really, really helped me so much was having all of that translated into Portuguese. That was really a gift to me. I was not trying to make that happen. So the whole notion of the freedom, I think, is recognizing from the very beginning. Who asked that question? There you are, right there, right? Yep. Was recognizing from the very beginning of my time in academia that this institution was not set up for me, did not care about me, and I couldn't take it personally. Oh, they don't love me. They don't like my material. Oh, I feel so bad. They're not talking about my racism. I mean, I just, all right? From the very beginning, it was all about gaining positions of power and authority and accessing resources to do the intellectual work that is free, or as free as you can get it to be at certain times in your career. Early on, I had to be much more strategic about how I said things. So if you read Black Feminist Thought, my first book, there's some pretty radical stuff in there. But it really has decorum. It fits, it's right in the pocket of citations. It's right in the pocket of how it's written in academic work. It's not a memoir, so it can be discredited because it's just Patricia Hill Collins' experiences. It's something else. And fighting, so I was quite careful about how I did that first book because I thought it was really important. And I can remember one situation where I presented the book and there were a group of several white feminists, and I very much valued their work. It wasn't that I didn't value their work. I just didn't cite them. I cited Black women, sometimes anonymous Black women. They raised their hand like, I noticed that Patricia Collins, you did not cite XYZ's work on so-and-so reproductive rights. The woman raised her hand and she's waving her hand around. You didn't cite me, which says, well, how legitimate is your work? And I had to tell her, because there wasn't enough space in this book to cite your work and to cite all the Black women who could not be cited. So how are you with waiting your turn? Obviously, I enjoyed that moment. So, although it happened many years ago. So the whole notion of, I see my work as kind of all three of these questions working together. All right. I see this question of creating space on the front end, and continuing to stay on the path of doing the work, to recognizing the dangers and sort of anticipating as opposed to reacting, anticipating that somebody's going to come after you for whatever it is. Intersectionality would be the case of that. To getting ahead of stuff by going where creative ideas, activism are going and keeping up and validating that. That is really where I am with hip hop. I don't want hip hop to be just taken away. It's not my discourse. But the point is, it's really important and it's global and it's powerful. And that's why the far right wants to, we want hip hop too. We want to be hip hop. We want to be like Kendrick Lamar. It's not going to happen. Was it Russian ISMC? They can't do that, right? They have no credibility to do that. So it's just really, if you're grounded in principled work, principled intellectual work, and living a principled life, you just keep going and you do it in a creative way that works for you. That's all three questions, one answer for three questions. Okay. Yeah, are you okay with another round? We'll do it. Look, I see a tentative hand over there. She really is waving her hand back there.
Mais 3 perguntas.
Boa tarde, eu estou muito feliz de...
Hold it. No, it's me.
Boa tarde, eu estou muito feliz de poder te conhecer. Meu nome é Vitória, eu sou da graduação em pedagogia e eu estou ouvindo você junto, peraí. Fui introduzida a você agora na minha produção de TCC, de trabalho de conclusão de curso. E está sendo, assim, incrível te ler, e eu fiquei muito animada em poder realmente te ver pessoalmente enfim, te ouvir. E a minha pergunta é sobre o impacto da família Obama naquele momento histórico. Eu gostaria de saber como que foi para a população norte-americana o impacto do primeiro presidente negro com a sua família ocupando esse local de destaque na política de um país que, né, sempre foi um local de visibilidade, como que eu posso dizer, da maior potência mundial até então.
Uhum.
Boa tarde, Patrícia. Um prazer escutá-la. Meu nome é Leonardo, eu sou professor de História e mestrando aqui no Prof. História, que é o mestrado profissional em ensino de História. E eu estou desenvolvendo um projeto sobre o ensino de História Negra na República através do hip-hop. E no desenvolvimento desse projeto, eu percebo que eu encontro muitas referências racionais, Emicida, que é da minha geração, Rincon Sapiência, só que eu vejo que as referências dos meus alunos, muitas vezes, elas partem de um hip-hop bem despolitizado, onde realmente a questão de raça não é muito debatida, até Djonga, que é uma referência bem conhecida aqui no Brasil, mais contemporânea, eles não escutam, e eu vejo que eles escutam um hip-hop que está bem distante, assim, principalmente desse quinto elemento, que é o conhecimento, que é o que baseia todo o meu projeto e toda a minha vontade, apesar deles se identificarem muito, porque eu trabalho em escola pública, em escola de periferia, então eu vejo muita identificação, mas eu vejo que, na prática, eles estão já um pouco distantes desse hip-hop mais combativo, desse hip-hop. Eu queria saber como que a gente lida com essa questão, justamente pensando sobre as diferentes desobediências, etc. Obrigado.
That's okay. Yeah, that's cool.
Oi, Patrícia. Boa tarde. Obrigado pela sua palestra, muito inspiradora, muito sofisticado o seu pensamento. Minha pergunta é parte de um lugar de que eu considero, acho que muitos aqui consideram que o Brasil hoje está de luto. A gente acabou de sair de uma chacina, de um massacre que bateu recordes de número de corpos negros mortos. E a minha pergunta é, como é que a gente mantém o ritmo, como é que a gente continua dançando quando a gente tem que se preocupar com a política de sobrevivência que você colocou?
One more? Okay.
Mas é?
Boa tarde, professora Patrícia, é um prazer estar aqui. Eu sou Débora, sou professora de enfermagem, e a gente tem trabalhado muito com as suas referências para trabalhar a saúde, especialmente a saúde da mulher negra, né? E eu fiquei pensando na cultura do hip-hop, na potência, né, para o ativismo negro, na juventude, o quanto isso impacta quando a gente olha para a saúde da mulher negra, como que essa mulher negra ela é retratada. Eu tenho uma aluna, não sei se ela está aqui, mas é uma aluna de doutorado, que a gente tem trabalhado o acesso da mulher negra a partir de uma leitura das imagens de controle. E quando a gente fala, por exemplo, da figura da Jezebel, né, dessa hipersexualização da mulher negra, da objetificação do corpo da mulher negra, a gente, infelizmente, vê isso muito retratado na cultura, né? Inclusive na cultura do hip-hop, e especialmente no Brasil também, a gente, não só do hip-hop, mas de diversas manifestações culturais. Aí eu queria entender um pouquinho, né, qual a sua perspectiva em relação a isso, porque muitas vezes o que eu observo enquanto professora e pesquisadora é uma confirmação, é uma apologia a essa estereotipação da mulher negra.
Okay, great. Let me try these. These are, again, questions that are powerful questions for me. Right, so let me take these in turn, and I may jump around, I'm not sure. But let me start with the first question, which is the impact of the Obama family. And I think that for many people, for many Black Americans, everyone was extremely excited about this victory. but they were also holding their breath the very same day out of fear that he would be assassinated. And I think that sums up sort of the fear and the excitement and the fear and holding one's breath through 2 terms of the Obama family. Now, they did everything they could to be themselves authentically, but also public figures in terms of what that involved. Michelle Obama, much beloved by many Black women. Her program, she changed the meaning of what it meant to be a first lady, from just an ornamental person to someone who had a program for children, for healthcare, for healthy eating, for exercise. She had a program that really did address some very important issues in the US. But the thing is, I wrote a piece called The First Black Family in the White House, right? Our institution, the house there has just been the White House for quite a long time. So what did it mean to have to deal with those contradictions? How did that family negotiate that? And in many ways, not their hands were tied, but it was a challenge. Because what I think was quite significant during that period of time was their 8 years of experience was used as evidence for everyone else that there was no more racism. Because if he could do it and she could do it, why can't the rest of you do it? So now we know that is not the case, because that directly after the Obama administration, we got the first Trump administration, which was very much a backlash against all of those things, even though it was not necessarily labeled as an anti-Black backlash. The second Trump administration clearly fits that profile much more closely. I could make that case more convincingly now. So when I think about what the Obama administration and the family did, was it did raise the profile of Black people, middle-class Black people. But unfortunately, there was a good deal of criticism of Barack Obama for his Black male emphasis. He would say things like men should be fathers, all of that, in some ways that could be interpreted as being not as supportive of Black women. He was criticized for that. But I tend to see all that family did in terms of what's not happening now. If you look at the programming of the Kennedy Center, for example, in Washington, and how the current administration, the current president has made himself the head of the Kennedy administration and fired all these people. Under the Obama administration, they brought in all kinds of talent, all kinds of art, all kinds of young people. They're the ones that have the performance of Hamilton that goes on to become a hit in New York, in the US. So there's a whole lot that is contradictory during that period, but that's what life is like. That's what political life is. It's kind of looking at the possibilities and the constraints for each period. So that's an important period to come back and take a look at. Now, we've got here your students in education not particularly listening to political hip hop. Yeah? So what? I think what people listen to and what they want to listen to very much matches their experiences and helps them understand their experiences better. What I'd want to do is put together your students with your question over here, which is, what would they make of their position in a culture where, I believe it was 20-something people, how many people were murdered? 121. It was a very high number. And to recognize they are part of that group, to begin to ask the question, connecting real life political issues with the type of art and music and culture that is being made, keeping in mind that not all art, music, and culture is supposed to be a political lesson coming into your head. Sometimes music, art, culture allows you to just survive. it gives you a respite. It gives you a way of not thinking about those things. And I can't speak to where your students fall in this particular perspective. But if you think that the music is bad for them that they're listening to, that they're actually being misled into certain kinds of fantasy lands or whatever, that's one thing. But I think that that hip hop has provided a language for young people to understand their own experiences. But we also have to be open to the fact that not all young people are the same. That's the complexity and the heterogeneity that's in hip hop. The issue is to put those in conversation with each other so that your students have an analysis of these murders. What would they say about that? Now, they may be too young, or that it's not appropriate for school, but it might happen someplace else. But if they're aware of it, they're going to need a place to think about these kinds of hard-hitting issues. And that, in fact, would be the response, too, is people not being immobilized, frozen by the shock of it all, the horror of it all. It's really to think about each of those individual people who care about them and who love them and who, on their behalf, have to think about what to do next. That's an organizational issue as well. So this is where that sort of model of politics that I put up, the whole survival politics part of Black activism, this is a period of time to really say, we're going to have to think about our family institutions, our community institutions, in terms of what we can do to ensure the survival of Black youth so that they do come to adulthood, or those who do come to adulthood. So basically, I'm just trying to communicate the sad fact that this is not new, and that it's not enough to say that. The issue is, what are the resources there now that people have, whether it's just refusing to forget? Sometimes that's all you can do, or organizing, or holding those who they love dear close to them and telling them about this, as opposed to trying to shield them from the conditions that are out there, equipping them to go into those kinds of situations. Those are strategic questions. But I don't think there is a good answer to this question. I actually think there's no good answer to your question, right? It's more like how to really cut into it in all the ways that we are connected to it. So that's the best I can do there. The hypersexualization. Where'd she go? She's right there. She's writing. There you are. Oof, okay, I know you were over there somewhere. I think it's difficult to escape the whole issue of Black women's hypersexualization in Brazilian culture, based on how central that is to dominant cultural politics, not just Black cultural politics at all, like in hip hop, sexy women and all that, but that it's marketable, and it's also attached to to Brazilian national identity in ways where a lot of people are quite happy to see hypersexualized Black women at Carnival, in terms of all the dollars that brings in. So in the same way that the national pageantry, I don't know what the interventions would be like, but can you imagine a carnival with no Black women who refuse to dance in feathers? What would that be like? I'm not saying that should happen, but what I'm saying is recognizing all the ways that these ideas are taken for granted and normalized, not just it's affecting you in the health setting, but continuing to do the work to analyze each of those points, doctor visits, whatever it is, who gets treated a certain way, who gets bad treatment because of that. How do the police treat women who claim to be who were sexually assaulted? So there's a lot of stuff there that goes to the hypersexualization of Black women. What were you wearing? Are you sure you're not a puta? That kind of thing. You know, what you were, so that really, it's a big question. I don't think that this is one that has a policy answer per se. This is a cultural norm that has to shift through multiple places of people fighting that, because it's also a quite old and deep one. This is not going to go away tomorrow. So I'm not trying to be gloomy about this. I'm just trying to be pragmatic about it. So, you know, I would suggest that somebody become the expert on all the various ways that this affects healthcare delivery. I mean, leave no stone unturned. There is an article, there is a book, there is a film, there is something where you cannot ever claim, I did not know that hypersexualization was an issue in the healthcare system. This is not for you to do. It is a collaborative project. Maybe it's similar to over here. I see a collaborative community projects, communities that are really in that situation, because I know that's happened. I know people have organized in the past quite vigorously, but I'm still thinking about this one. On the way back to Sao Paulo, I will come up with your answer, unfortunately, but I think it will be too late for this venue. Okay? Okay, it's okay. We're done. Obrigada.
Obrigado, Patrícia. Mais uma vez, eu quero agradecer a do Unicamp por nos receber aqui, agradecer ao Messila, ao Centro de Sociologia Contemporânea, do IFCH, o Programa de Pós-Graduação em Sociologia, ao IFCH, a todas e todos vocês que vieram assistir, os meus colegas que ajudaram a organizar essa sessão, a professora Mariana Chaguri, e Patricia, thank you very much. Foi emocionante, tenho certeza, e we're done. Muito obrigado. Um ótimo feriado de 20 de novembro para vocês.
Yes.